By the way, most Christians don't know it either. My point isn't to show Jews are ignorant, but if you think if there's anybody who ought to know, it's Jews. That the Jewish scripture, the Torah, is on the Liberty Bell. American Jews, I want to talk to you about them for a moment. Because American Jews should enter a world of cognitive dissonance at this time, because they have beliefs that don't comport with reality. 2 weeks ago, my column was a letter, as it were, a question for my friend Alan Dershowitz, and we are friendly. It wasn't a throwaway line. In fact, he just wrote a response to my old friend Dennis Prager. I didn't write old friend; he wrote old friend. He meant it as veteran rather than chronological. Anyway, he's considerably older than I am. But be that as it may. I asked, I said, you know, you've written 4 books defending Israel, and they're very fine books. And you call people who are anti-Israel moral imbeciles. Moral idiots, not imbeciles, moral idiots. Now, Professor Dershowitz, God bless you for the work that you do on behalf of Israel, but all the moral idiots are on the left where you are. Do you ever ask, why am I on the left with the moral idiots of the world? And this is not meant as a teasing question. It is not meant with chutzpah. It is meant sincerely. If on some of the greatest moral issues of our day, my side was the moral idiot side, I would ask myself, what's wrong with my side? Unfortunately, too many American Jews, and this is a lecture, maybe if the world is not in crisis next year, Rabbi Brisky, this is what I'll talk about. Why are Jews on the left? Because non-Jews and Jews are fascinated by that topic. So I can't give you another lecture here now. This is already overrunning its time, but I just want to tell you that the obvious, most Jews are left of center. That's in America. That's just a fact. You all know that. And yet, why? Look, for example, here. Most Jews want a secularized America. They look to secular Europe as a model. But look at how bad it is for Jews in secular Europe. The fire bombings of synagogues in France are awful. For Jews in Britain are afraid to be public as a Jew. They're afraid to wear a Star of David, let alone a yarmulke in public. In the United States, I took my son to Waco, Texas. I had a lecture for the Jewish Federation of Dallas, Texas. My son was then my older son is about 7, so this is about 18 years ago. And at that time, he was at a Jewish day school, and he wore a kippah all the time. I wear one at home, not outside, but he wore one at the time. In fact, he does now, to rebel against it. And that's how you raise an Orthodox Jew. Send him to a Reform synagogue. Anyway, it's a funny line in my own family. They all scratch their heads. But anyway, my son is wearing a kippah, skull cap, whatever you want to call it. And the retreat for the Dallas Jewish Federation was in rural Texas, hours out of Dallas and past Waco. And that was the biggest city near there. So we went into, I don't know, some Dairy Queen or something for an ice cream. And my son is wearing a yarmulke in rural Texas. And all he got was positive reinforcement. People would just say, hey, Sonny, what's that? I said, oh, I'm Jewish, and this is my yarmulke. You know, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. In rural Texas. You can't do that in urban Paris. That's the difference in this country and that country. America celebrates Jews, doesn't tolerate Jews. It celebrates Jews. That never happened in Europe. Because it celebrates Judaism. It celebrates the Jewish scriptures. It celebrates that belief system and that value system. But American Jews still want a secularized America. In his response to me, which we're going to publish soon, and I'll have an ongoing debate with Alan Dershowitz, he said, of course I'm on the left. They're wrong on Israel, a lot of them, but still, I'm on the left. I believe not only do I believe in the separation of church and state, I don't think the wall is high enough. The wall isn't high enough. I wonder if he agrees with the woman in, what was it, North Carolina, that I reported Christmas time. There was an article, I think it was North Carolina. I was reading a report from the local TV station. The kindergarten, the public school kindergarten, played or sang Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And it was objected to, the article said, by one woman who later identified as a Jewish woman, objected to it. I wrote a whole essay on being embarrassed that a Jew would object to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Now, if a Jew finds that offensive, with all respect, the Jew is an idiot. I mean, folks, talk about paranoia. Oh, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer today, Inquisition tomorrow. That's how a lot of Jews think. Can't be too high enough, that barrier. Those kids will hear Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Who knows what will happen the next day? Well, I'll tell you what will happen if we get rid of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and get rid of Christianity in America. You will be just like Europe. Is that what my fellow Jews really want? Are we done? Is that what we really want? It's not thought through. It's just felt. It's not thought. American Jews are still wary of Christians. The best friends that the Jews in Israel have tend to be Christian, but Jews are still, by and large, wary of Christians. Not of Muslims, not of the left. And I'm not saying all Muslims are anti-Semitic, that's not my point at all. But if there is a religion from which anti-Semitism comes today, it is from the Islamic world. That's not anti-anything, that's describing the reality of the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. Yep. Then you get more nonsense, Jew or non-Jew, saying, like the latest is minimize bloodshed. All the calls to minimize bloodshed in Gaza. I get a kick up. You know how you minimize bloodshed? By defeating Hamas. That is how you minimize bloodshed. It's an extraordinary thing. We want to minimize bloodshed. Okay, I'm all for minimizing bloodshed. That's why you get rid of evil. When you get rid of evil, you minimize bloodshed. But if you can shed the blood of the evil when you have no other choice to stop evil, then you will have in fact minimized bloodshed. There is a prayer in Judaism, which I actually said at the state capitol in Sacramento when I was introducing Governor Schwarzenegger, again a Chabad event, lighting the menorah. That was a highlight. By the way, there were two highlights for me: the lighting of the state menorah, being the MC for the event at the freezing state capitol that day. But there was another highlight. I didn't know if I could do this, but there are a few shrines I want to visit before I leave this world. I've seen the Taj Mahal, very nice, but this one was number one. The smoking tent of Governor Schwarzenegger. This, I had read about it, I had fantasized as a daily cigar smoker. The thought, you know, the governor does all his business in a tent because he's not allowed to smoke, because the entire state legislature will die of secondhand smoke. I will make no joke. I will make no joke about it. Okay, I'm tempted, but I will say nothing about that. I will only tell you that, so what he said is, okay, if I can't smoke in the state capitol, I'll smoke outside the state capitol. He built a tent. So I mumbled to him after I sat down from one of the introductions and comments. I said, listen, I gotta just tell you, if you have any time right after this, I really want to see your smoke. And I never do that. I am not celebrity intoxicated. I'm abnormally uninterested in celebrity life. And he said, oh, no problem, later, just come to me. Well, you must go on YouTube tonight. I went into the tent with, it was just him, me, and his photographer. And he was having a blast, and he was really funny. And I realized I had one of, you know, a little camera, which also does video. And I thought, well, I'm not going to take stills, big deal. I'm going to take a video of this. So I asked his photographer, can you do this? So he asked the governor, because, you know, anything the governor's in, he has to, okay. He said, go right ahead. So I look into the camera and I talk about the idiocy of secondhand smoking, not knowing that right behind me, the governor of California is lighting up the longest cigar that has ever been manufactured. Now remember, I didn't know this. It looks like he and I have rehearsed in comedy. Just really go on YouTube and Google Prager and Schwarzenegger. You will crack up at what happened there. Anyway, it was just, I thought I'd share that with you because these are comments that I was making when I was there, and I told about this Jewish prayer. That's what made me recall this. There's a Jewish prayer. Very famous to Jews. It is how we end the grace after meals, and it is a very famous phrase. It says, God will give strength to his people. God will give peace to his people. Will bless his people with peace. And I am not the one who realized this. This was taught to me by a rabbi. You can't have peace. God will only bless you with peace if you are first strong. It is a brilliant verse. First, you get strong, then you're blessed with peace. Since World War I, the West has not believed in strength. Since the Vietnam War, much of America has not believed in strength. But enough of America does to be strong enough to take the barbs of the world and still support this little state of Israel. And I end with one other moral overview of this issue, which is the subject of my column this week. And that is, who is bothered by the deaths of Palestinian civilians in Gaza? And the answer is, by and large, Jews. When you think about it, and of course, non-Jews who share the Jews' values, of course, but I'm talking about among the combatants. Let's see who isn't bothered. Is Hamas bothered by the deaths of Palestinians? They want dead Palestinians. In fact, Charles Krauthammer, that brilliant essayist, pointed out that it is more important to have dead Palestinians for Hamas than dead Israelis. Dead Palestinians, given the moral idiocy of the world press, which Israel brilliantly has barred because it knows it is just a megaphone for Hamas and a propaganda vehicle for Hamas, unfortunately. And so they want dead Palestinians. The deader, the better. The more, the merrier. You know that they were hiding in the biggest hospital? The leaders were hiding in the hospital? You know that they have rocket launching pads by schools. Always in busy areas, so that any retaliation must kill civilians. Who does that? Who does that? So, who is bothered by Palestinian civilian deaths in Gaza? Not Hamas, not the Arab world. The Arab world is uninterested in whether Arabs get killed. Only when Arabs get killed by American troops or Israelis do they protest. Excuse me. The butchery of Saddam Hussein against Arabs bothered no one in the Arab world that we know of. In terms of any demonstration, editorial writing, nothing. Not to mention the slaughter of Sudanese black Muslims, which was taking place by the Islamic Republic and the Arab Republic of Sudan. No. That is a non-issue. It's when an Israeli kills one, then it's a big issue. But it's not the dead Palestinian that is the issue, it's that the fact that a Jew did it. So who does it bother? Does it bother Russia or China when there were dead Palestinian civilians? It's a rhetorical question. Does it bother the United Nations? I don't know what bothers the United Nations other than the US and Israel. I'm dead serious. What bothers the United Nations morally? Do you know? I don't know. Do you know that 5 million people in the Congo have been murdered, have been slaughtered, have been butchered in the last 5 years? 5 million, a million a year for the last 5 years. Most underreported genocide in human history. Real genocide. Not what the Arabs call genocide, when there were 300 civilians killed because they were exactly placed where Hamas artillery was. 5 million people in the Congo. Go home and look it up, because it almost sounds incredible. Why isn't the UN doing anything about it? Why doesn't it talk about it? Why 19 resolutions against Israel? How come none against Sudan, which is making a bona fide genocide-like event in the Sudan? Thank you very much. In Darfur. But what it ends up, you know who's bothered? Americans care about Palestinian civilians and Israelis. And that's pretty much it. And Israelis in particular. You know, the largest demonstration in Israel's history was against Israel because of what they felt was allowing Lebanese Christian militia groups to kill Palestinian refugees in the Sabra and Shatila refugee camps in Lebanon. The biggest demonstration in Israel history was because the Israelis didn't think that fellow Israelis had done enough to stop a massacre of Palestinians. Can you imagine a demonstration in a Muslim or Arab country because they didn't do enough to stop a massacre of Jews? It's inconceivable, correct? Inconceivable. And yet to the New York Times there was some moral equivalence. To CNN, NBC, CBS, BBC, and you name it. That's the world in which we live. And so, yes, I must tell you, I'll end where I began. I do see, and I'm not here to convince you to be religious or anything like that. That is not my agenda. My agenda is to be honest with you and tell you how I understand the world. I don't think that everything is just purely on the rational level of understandable political science, cause and effect. There are transcendent elements that are taking place. The existence of a Jewish state after 2,000 years has bothered a lot of people. There are people who want it extinguished, of all backgrounds and all places in the world. This is a fight that matters. All human souls are precious. Every civilian of every country is precious. This is understood. An Israeli is no more precious than a Brazilian or a Burmese. That is not the point. It has never been the point. It shows that it's never meant Jews were worth more than anybody else. Never. But it did mean that they had a special role. I think that that is being played out at this time. It is one of the only sources of comfort that I have. It's really a theological comfort that the suffering has meaning. There is only one thing worse than meaningless suffering, than meaningful suffering, and that is meaningless suffering. And that is what is happening now, folks. Meaningful suffering. And we have the biggest battle in the world, and the most important country in the world, in the United States of America. Because if we keep producing a generation that did not know Joseph, to use the biblical phrase, that does not know its history, that does not know where America came from, that does not understand what is on the Liberty Bell, Jews and Americans alike have a very bleak future. Because Jews and Americans were always tied together when there were only a tiny number of Jews here, with all the cities named Zion, and with all the founders named Benjamin, and with all the Hebrew on the insignias of universities like Yale. You couldn't get a BA at Harvard until 1800 if you didn't know Hebrew. That is how linked this country was to its Hebrew origins. We lose them, we lose America. Thank you for listening. resolutions with Hezbollah and Hamas. At a given point, Israel's strength, if it continues to be strong and continues to prevail, will win out. The Arab world has flirted in just my own adult lifetime with Marxism, Pan-Arabism, and Islam. Islam is the answer, is the current rage in the Arab world, but before that, that was not the rage. Nasser wasn't religious. Nasser was a pan-Arabist. Remember, he changed the name of Egypt to United Arab Republic? They have flirted with, and they failed. And over the course of time, now it's harder for radical Islam to fail because it has religious foundations where the others didn't. They were imports from the West. Nationalism is a Western import. There were no Arab countries as countries by and large. They were made by imperialist nations. And the secular ideal of Marxism certainly was an import from the West. So this one will take a longer time. Gradually, with Israel ultimately being strong, and if possible, open also to negotiations. I am all for it. Believe it or not, I'm a peacenik. I'm just not an idiot. Love of peace shouldn't make you lose your mind. And you will get peace if you are strong and people realize that it won't be crushed. It won't be crushed. Some generation of kids will finally awaken to the idea that maybe it isn't a mitzvah to die. Maybe it's a mitzvah to live. To put it in Hebrew terms, what I'm asking a lot of Islamic kids to believe. Europe is a very serious problem. If Europe does not have a Western Renaissance, I frankly, my belief, I've said this now for about 10 years on the radio, is that Europe by 2050 will either be Muslim or there will be a civil war. I read to you a report today. It was some writer brilliantly pointed out in the Wall Street Journal, CNN, he said in a Freudian moment, described the Arab Muslim world and included London. That's right. So, look, I mean, they're adopting Sharia in parts of Britain. The Archbishop of Canterbury, I won't say anything more about him. Jewish laws against humiliating people publicly. And so I won't say anything more, but he is not a wise man. And, he said this was amazing. He said, look, is it online now?
Yeah, absolutely.
How does one look at it?
Democast.tv.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. As one who recognizes the nature of Islamic imperialism as a theological motivation, essentially a holy war, which existed against the Jews before the founding of the State of Israel, and we now see playing out on American, not just American, on global city streets, especially since the Gaza incident now, we're starting to see demonstrations, anti-Jewish demonstrations, not just anti-Israel demonstrations, of a level not seen since pre-Holocaust World War II.
That's right.
Have you seen these days?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Jews back to the ovens is now a feature of many of these demonstrations. Yes.
In London, pro-Palestinian.
In London, in Denmark, that's right.
They went from the Palestinian demonstration down Golders Green Road, which is a Jewish neighborhood, Orthodox neighborhood, went into the stores, vandalized storefronts and bus shelters. There are Jews now not only getting physically hurt, but the messages of swastikas on the Israeli flag are getting shown, equating this false notion of
it is look, I don't get scared easily, and it is a scary time. It is scary that the Interior Minister, after a firebombed synagogue in Paris, another firebombed synagogue, announced this is terrible, this increase in anti-Jewish and anti-Muslim violence. And I looked up, maybe I just hadn't seen reports of firebombed mosques in Paris. But there aren't any.
So there are vitriolic demonstrations right outside the Israeli embassy on Wilshire Boulevard.
Yes, that's right.
Who outnumber the Israeli counter-protesters 10 to 1.
Yeah.
We even engage them,
right.
and the question is, where's the Jewish leadership?
Well, the Jewish leadership is doing what it can. I mean, you know, look, people who actually, the truth is, most people who have a life don't demonstrate. That's not a defense. I started my public life at Soviet Jewry demonstrations, so I know their importance. But it is harder to gather people who have a constructive life than people who have destructive lives. That's just the way it is. Everybody here probably has a family to take care of in some way, whether a parent or a child or a spouse or a sibling or something, and probably is. Most of you are gainfully employed. Most of you are involved in some community work. You think the people shouting death to Israel are involved in anything constructive? Gee, I'm going to go from here to the Salvation Army and all right, thanks very much. Listen, let me tell the last guys. I'm just going to take these next two guys, so forgive me, because I promised everybody to do this. It's already past 9:30. Sorry about that, I really am. You guys go ahead. Yeah.
My name is Alex. I'm professor at UC Berkeley. I'm considered to be a general position. And I'm wondering, in the course of the debate, I have lots of debates on Facebook and on IM and stuff. When it comes to a point when the established fact is a lie, when people believe a lie and that's used to justify all kinds of stuff, how does one go on? Because the first debate is the logically used points to establish what I believe is the one when the establishment is a lie, how does one get past that?
I find that on the Arab-Israeli dispute, I remember when I was 2 years older than you, a junior at a university in England, I debated a Jordanian consular official. I think it was my first public debate. And it was fascinating because I said to mostly left-wing students, I just looked at them and I said, look, virtually every Jew and pro-Israel person I know acknowledges that Palestinians have rights on this land. I'd like the Jordanian Consul General to tell us if he believes Jews. Something to the effect, right? My Lord was a Jewish carpenter. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's the opposite of anti-Semitism. The Christians of America are proud of the Jewishness of Jesus Christ. That's the difference between the Christians of America and the anti-Semites of the world. So one thing is, do you recognize any national right of the Jews to this land or only in Palestine? Ask me. Second, there are 200 or so countries on earth. Virtually every single one was formed in bloodshed. Why is only the Jewish state the size of New Jersey the one you demonstrate against? Ask them that question. Okay? And wait, one more thing. Bring me to Berkeley. Bring me to Berkeley. Finally.
Hi, this is Rich. Last summer, my friend in the front row, Schwarzenegger, and myself were lucky enough to be on your show, and he had us on for a couple of segments, and it did a lot for Schwarzenegger's book sales and things like that. I want to thank you for that. The question that I want to ask, it's kind of a lighter question. I feel bad for one of the two gentlemen who got ushered away because I have a rather light question. But on behalf of Serena and myself, we just want to know what your assessment is of the first 4 hours of the new season of 24.
Well, are you including the Africa 2 hours, the 2 hours in Africa?
Sure.
Okay, those are the ones I saw. I don't see it live because I can't sit through the commercials without, frankly, going to the bathroom. I is that correct? And that is, I get that nervous. He has picked a weak spot in my life, 24. Here is my advice. If you don't know what it is, don't ask anyone. Do not watch it. Do not learn about it. Do not read about it. In fact, watch this watch. You never heard. The thing is so damn addicting that I regret ever having watched the segment. I don't even watch TV, and I'm addicted to that. So that is a good, and you know why, by the way? It's well acted, and you get involved with the people. You care about it. But my favorite thing is, there is a guy, the hero of these episodes, fights evil for a living. And that is so nice. Since we had a student from Berkeley, let me end with a Berkeley story. Berkeley declared itself about 15 years ago, because the Berkeley City Council feels if it doesn't do something truly foolish, it should resign. It is part of the curriculum vitae of a member of the Berkeley City Council to do something foolish each year. One year they declared by unanimous vote Berkeley to be a hate-free zone. And I announced on the air that I can no longer, with any honesty, visit Berkeley. I'm not hate-free. And I find people who are hate-free frightening. If you don't hate evil, if you don't hate sadism and cruelty and malicious torture, there's something wrong with you. I don't think you can love properly. How do you love and care for victims if you have no animosity toward what was done? Even if you say love the sinner and hate the sin, you still have to hate something, the sin. Something has to be hated. As the Psalms say, those of you who love God hate evil. And that's a damn good guidebook, and the older I get, the more I prefer that particular book to even the New York Times editorial. Thank you, everybody.